Today I'd like to welcome a guest on the channel, Eric Kai. As a quick introduction, I actually found Eric through LinkedIn. So one of my network connections here liked one of his, comments here, kind of criticizing some of the ways that statistics is not done correctly. I enjoyed it. I went and looked him up, and I was shocked to find that he also had a YouTube channel. So I was pretty amazed. I reached out to him, we've kind of connected back and forth, and today we're going to talk all about the Canadian system here for university and education, since Eric actually comes from Canada. So without further ado, let's just dive on in.
Hi, Dimitri. It's nice to talk to you. I've enjoyed your content very much, and I'm happy to contribute to it.
Thank you. All right, so let's just dive on in here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let me share my screen and show you some information. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Excellent. Okay. I'm a statistician, and I earned my bachelor's degree with a major in chemistry and a minor in mathematics at Fraser University, which is in Vancouver, British Columbia. So to those of you who may not be familiar with Canada, Vancouver is on the west coast of Canada, and SFU is located in a municipality, a city called Burnaby in Metro Vancouver. So within Burnaby, SFU is very unique among universities, as far as I know, because it's located on the top of a mountain. So on the top right here, you can see Burnaby Mountain Park, and that's where SFU is.
Very cool.
So this was where I went to school, and this is also where I lived for several years because I lived on campus while I was an undergraduate student there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I earned my bachelor's degree with a major in chemistry and a minor in mathematics, and I graduated in 2011. And then I went to the University of Toronto to earn my Master of Science degree in statistics. So Toronto is in central Canada, located in southwestern Ontario, and well, southern Ontario. So let's just say southern Ontario.
Okay.
And Toronto is a very metropolitan city, and the University of Toronto is located in downtown Toronto. So it's a very different geography from SFU. So as you can see here, the University of Toronto is very much in downtown Toronto, right here. Mm-hmm. And so this is what U of T looks like with the CN Tower in the background, as you can see.
Okay.
So that's where I earned my Master of Science degree in statistics in 2012. And I've worked as a statistician in many different organizations since then. Currently, I work as a senior analyst in advanced analytics at Acosta, which is a company that provides services in sales, marketing, and merchandising for suppliers of consumer packaged goods.
Okay, very cool. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned too that you have a list of co-op jobs, which is very unique to Canada. This is a little different than how the United States works. Do you want to talk a little bit about co-ops and how they kind of function?
Absolutely, yeah. My career can be broadly divided into two phases. So there was the phase of internships or cooperative education jobs that I held when I was an undergraduate student at Simon Fraser University. And the second phase is the permanent jobs that I held as a statistician since earning my master's degree. So in terms of my cooperative education jobs, co-op is a program that I think started actually at my alma mater at Simon Fraser University and has since expanded in many universities in Canada. It is work, it is paid work experience for your field of study facilitated by your university. So I studied chemistry, and my university had a cooperative education program just for chemistry students. And that program looked for jobs in chemistry for me. And even beyond chemistry, if I decided to look for jobs in other fields, the university would still have jobs in those other fields that would open up to me as well. So I also worked in market analysis and academic industrial relations for co-op jobs during my time as an undergraduate student. And those jobs are available in this bank of jobs that students can apply for at the university. The nice thing about this program is that the university facilitates this work placement between the students and the employers. So there is a co-op coordinator who helps with the job application program, who provides the mentorship, who provides the guidance, who provides mock interviews and reviews of resumes and cover letters. And also, these jobs are often available only to co-op students at universities. So oftentimes employers like to take advantage of the filtering system that cooperative education offers, so that they don't have to open the job applications to all possible applicants. They can go through the universities, know that there's already a filtering system in place to screen out some of the applicants. And so it takes some of the work off the plate for employers. It helps the students to have some guidance from a co-op coordinator, and it also offers work experience that's related to their field of study. They get paid for it, so it helps them to pay for their tuition fees and other expenses during their studies. And oftentimes students will make good connections with the employers during their co-op jobs, and the employers will hire them permanently upon graduation. So many students end up getting jobs with their co-op employers right out of school.
Okay, this is very cool. It's very different than the US. So as many people know, right, the United States has an internship program, somewhat kind of loosely bound. If you go to like a top rated university, right, you'll have employers somewhat catering to you, not really as organized as a co-op. It's kind of like, you know, elite universities will have these kind of building programs, or everyone will come in and hire. And then on the flip side of that, right, if you go to a average school, so I went to an average Washington State University for my undergrad, we didn't really have anyone come, a few companies here and there, but definitely nothing like that. And then you mentioned too with the co-op, right? This is 100% paid or subsidized, correct?
Correct. This is paid. You absolutely get paid to work as a co-op student.
Okay.
So when I was at SFU, I worked in many co-op jobs. And I also got jobs on my own without the help of a co-op program. And oftentimes the co-op programs will require you to complete a certain number of credits before you can apply for jobs, because they want to make sure that you actually have a certain level of competence, a certain level of accomplishment before you apply for jobs. So many universities require you to complete maybe a year or 2 years worth of courses before you can apply for co-op jobs. And then afterward, they encourage you to complete 3 terms, each term being 4 months of length.
Okay.
And I think I did 5 terms. I don't think that my university restricted the number of terms of co-op that I could do. Most people do 3, 4. I think that's normal. So there were jobs that I got through the co-op program, and then there were jobs that I got on my own, and then there were jobs that I got through other programs that were funded by the Canadian federal government. So here on this slide, you can see a list of the fields that I worked in. So I worked in evolutionary biology, bee ecology, molecular cardiac physiology. My first co-op job that SFU helped me to find was in environmental chemistry. And then after that, I ventured beyond natural science and basic science, and I went into a field called technology transfer, which is academic industrial relations for technology commercialization. Mm-hmm. That was a very interesting job. And after that, I found a job through a program through the Canadian federal government to do media relations. After that, I got another co-op job to do market analysis for a clean technology company. And then finally, I had 2 jobs in applied mathematics that were funded through the Canadian federal government through the university as well. So in total, I worked for 9 semesters.
Okay.
I worked for non-consecutively 3 years. And that was a great chance for me to explore different fields, different jobs, find out what I like, what I don't like. And it was a good way for me to earn some money during my studies to help me to fund for my living expenses. I already had a scholarship to pay for all of my tuition fees and most of my living expenses anyway. So money wasn't as important to me, but still it was very helpful to have that money and to have that experience, to have that paid work experience on my resume that I could present to employers. And so I'm happy to talk about them more in a future interview with you, by the way, Dimitri. We have a lot planned for this conversation just about my education in Canadian universities. So this is just a teaser for anybody who's interested in my work history before graduation from university.
Right. So before we get too off topic, because we're going to dive in here more on education piece. So that's kind of your work history from a very high level view, your internship. Do you want to talk a little bit about how, projects that you've done, some of these personal projects have played into how you've kind of landed these internships, as you've mentioned, on your own, not necessarily through the co-op, and also how you've landed kind of these jobs, really interesting jobs, job after job?
In terms of my personal project, I think that they are more relevant for the jobs that I held after graduation, so the permanent jobs that I held. So in terms of my personal projects, I have a blog called The Chemical Statistician that I use to share my knowledge about statistics and chemistry and math and machine learning, and then later about career advice for statisticians. I later expanded that to a YouTube channel to share technical tutorials about statistics and chemistry. And I also started a talk show called The Central Equilibrium, in which I interview guests to talk about technical topics in math, science, economics. And the key requirement in this talk show is that the guest has to write an equation or a formula or a graph on the whiteboard and explain it and allow me to ask them questions about it. So
this is my favorite piece. So Eric Kai, if you haven't noticed, he's doing all kinds of things as well. My favorite content that you have is the Central Equilibrium. And I spent time watching the one on NLP.
Oh, okay. With Mandy Gu. Yeah.
Yeah, with Mandy. And I think it was so refreshing to show people kind of like these are the real world conversations that people actually have somewhat behind closed doors. They're not necessarily like publicized. And I really like that you're showing us like the education piece, the learning, and how you can kind of learn these basics from different people. I don't know. I really enjoy them. I watch a few of them here and there when I get some time.
Good. I'll make sure to tell Mandy that you enjoy that conversation. So a new venture that I'm focusing on nowadays is a newsletter called The Median. So this is a newsletter on Substack that is available for free.
Okay.
And it is meant to help statisticians and data scientists to develop their careers, especially in the early stages, improve their communication skills, and find out what I'm observing in the fields of statistics and data science.
Okay.
So again, this newsletter is free. It's available on Substack, and I'll make sure to send the link to Dimitri so that he'll include it in the show notes, in the description of the video below what you're watching. And I encourage you to sign up to receive this newsletter in your email inbox.
Awesome. I'll definitely sign up for that.
Yeah.
So let's dive in here, right? Are you ready to switch gears to, because you make it seem so clean, right? When you present, it seems like, you went, you got this undergrad degree, then you went and you got this master's degree, you had these amazing co-ops, and then you just dove into the industry. Mm-hmm. But do you want to talk a little bit about changing majors is you didn't mention that too much here, and how you took longer to do an undergrad, and yet you've covered all these different amazing fields. And I think so many people have that frustration of trying to decide what to do, and it's so hard to do it, especially if you're trying to limit yourself to something like 4 years.
Yeah, it's a good question, because I certainly did not have a very linear and direct path toward my career as a statistician now. So when I came out of high school, I was determined to go to medical school. And that was the only field that I was going to pursue. I didn't think about anything else. I didn't consider any other possibilities.
Okay.
So at Simon Fraser University, there's a history of excellence for pre-medicine in the kinesiology program. Okay. Kinesiology is traditionally known as the study of human movement, and at many universities, it's less scientific than a degree like physiology or human biology. But at SFU, depending on how you arrange your courses, kinesiology can be very complex and very scientific and very technical. And so many students who graduated from SFU's kinesiology program went on to go to medical school and succeed very well, and oftentimes are very well prepared to succeed in their medical studies because of the strong education that they received in their undergraduate studies in kinesiology at SFU. So when I got my scholarship to go to SFU, that's where I went to initially. But I switched paths during my undergraduate study many times. So I switched from kinesiology to biology and then to environmental chemistry. I did not take any courses in business, but I did several jobs in business in the co-op program, and I seriously considered that as an option. And so I explored taking steps to prepare for an MBA. Okay. I later switched to economics, and I took a few courses in economics, and I was going to at least minor in economics and even consider applying to grad school in economics. And then I switched to applied mathematics, and I was seriously considering that. And I had 2 research jobs in applied math. And then I finally decided to focus on statistics. And I actually didn't even major or minor in statistics in my bachelor's degree. It was only when I went to my master's degree at the University of Toronto where I studied statistics.
Okay.
It was a long path of many different stops and many changes, and a lot of exploration along the way in terms of co-op jobs and meetings with people who worked in industry, people who were in academia, to find out the different paths. And so what I learned along the way is it's okay to explore different paths, because it's better to figure out what I don't like quickly than invest many years in a career that makes me unhappy. And I heard of many people who did the latter, who went through the motions, finished their undergrad degree with what they started as their intended major, worked for several years, if not several decades, in a career that they did not like. And it was only much later in their lives that they decided to change paths. And I did not want to be stuck in a field that I didn't like. So that's why I took so much time to invest in different paths.
I think it's an excellent point, though, because I think nowadays we have some of this retire early mentality a lot of times. And I think part of this is driven by people are in a hurry to get from school to get to what they call the real world, right? They're trying to hurry and get to that job. And I think often, like you're saying, right, they're so focused on getting to a destination that they fail to kind of look at, it'd be better to invest an extra year, 2 or 3 years here in my education, get headed in the right direction first, and then invest, in that career. As you're mentioning, it can be decades out. So at least you're a lot happier off down the road versus, rushing to get that degree. And then I've seen a lot of students find out, the job they wanted wasn't really what they thought it was. and then they have to either reinvent themselves or kind of suffer through it for a few more decades to get to that retirement point.
And speaking of that, I don't condemn the early retirement movement in any way. I think it's a great idea. I think that it's good to be conscious of your spending and your goals for money and for life in general, and to invest your money early and use the magic of compound interest to build your wealth. I think that all of that is great. I think that you can do that and also pursue a career and build the skills toward a career that you enjoy. So I don't think that
definitely.
those things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I'm not saying that you were making that point, but I just wanted to add to your point. I think that early retirement is great if that's something that you want to pursue and you have the discipline and the wealth to build towards that. Good for you. But I think that it's a good idea to, while you're in school, it's a good idea to figure out what you enjoy first, so that you can pursue the jobs that you enjoy and the jobs that will bring you the money that you can invest for your early retirement or whatever goal you have in life.
Right. So those are good points.
So I think the basic point that I want to make about switching majors is it's okay to do it, and it's important to do it to make sure that you pursue something that you enjoy, and something that is also going to reward you in terms of employment and in terms of income. And to do that, let's actually go back to my slides. I think it's to do that, you have to explore new paths with substance and rigorous investigations. So it can't be just pondering the path in your head. It has to be through experiences like a co-op job or an internship, where you're actually working in the field that you intend to work in after your studies. Or you can do information interviews with people who work in the field that you're interested in. Or you can do informational interviews with graduate chairs about graduate studies to pursue your career of interest. And I did all of these things to great extent when I was an undergraduate student. So that takes time and that takes effort. And it's not just a matter of thinking about these things theoretically in your head. It takes work. So exploring new paths and switching paths is totally okay, but you got to follow that up with the work and the effort and the time and the investment and the research.
Right. And the informational interviews, I think, are really good. I think a lot of students are somewhat nervous to contact professionals. And obviously, it can be challenging to find someone. But when you do get that conversation, you can learn a lot about an actual career from an industry perspective versus looking at Reddit forums or, your professor gives you an idea of what the industry is like, but they've never quite worked there. I think those are definitely an invaluable source of information on really what it's like to work in those daily kind of jobs and grind.
And by the way, not that I'm disagreeing with what you just said, but Reddit and Quora also offer valuable information. So I encourage viewers of this interview to use all resources that are available to you to learn about the fields that are interesting to you.
Do you find Reddit to be accurate? I'm just curious because on quantitative finance, I always get people asking questions based on a Reddit opinion. And 90% of the time, at least in quantitative finance, they're never accurate.
Just when I was an undergraduate student, I'm not sure if Reddit was available or if I knew about it to use it as a resource to explore career paths. But I use Reddit and Quora all the time now to get anecdotal evidence, to get qualitative data about things that I am interested in, whether it's a place to visit for a vacation or a company that I may be interested in working at. So I have used those resources since graduating from a master's degree, and I find them to be fairly reliable in the aggregate. So
okay. I think that's the crucial point there, is getting that aggregate perspective.
that's right. Yeah, I think it's crowdsourcing. It's using the wisdom of the crowds, and to use a concept from statistics, use the central equilibrium. Not the central not my talk show. This tells you how self-centered I am. Not the central equilibrium, the central limit theorem.
Yeah.
So, right. So if you use the central limit theorem, you'll know that even if you get some noise here and there, if you take the average of the information that you get about a particular topic, if the people who are giving that advice is sincere, if the people who are giving that advice are sincere and are authentic and giving the best information that they have under the circumstances, and if you aggregate many of these people's advice, then you will get a fairly good estimator of what the truth is about a particular field. So I think in the aggregate, Reddit and Quora are useful resources. Okay,
you can get a robust sample on this. Get some statistics jokes in here. So
yes. So those are some of the key lessons that I learned from switching majors. Something else that I learned from switching majors is that a field may be interesting to study, but not interesting to work in. So I majored in chemistry for my bachelor's degree, and I still love chemistry to this day. I think that it's a beautiful subject, and I love to study chemistry on paper. I'm very happy to draw resonance structures and calculate Ka values, and but there are all kinds of things that I enjoy doing in chemistry on paper. But working in a laboratory in environmental chemistry in one of my co-op jobs made me realize that I don't like laboratory chemistry. And many jobs in chemistry require laboratory chemistry, at least to start, right? Perhaps one could go into sales, one could go into consulting that involves chemistry, but usually one has to start working in the lab to pay their dues, so to speak, to eventually escalate to those office jobs in chemistry. And I did not want to go through that path. So that's why I decided to switch to something else. So that was a major reason why I decided to switch to business or economics or applied mathematics and eventually statistics.
Okay, that makes sense.
So just to summarize, especially because I'm coming from Canada, and I know that many of your viewers are from the United States, I just want to emphasize a few things. So co-op is a very common program in Canadian universities across the country. There are some notable exceptions. So I went to the University of Toronto for my master's degree, and there are 3 campuses for the University of Toronto. There's the one in downtown Toronto called St. George. There's one in Mississauga, and then there's one in Scarborough. And the main campus, the St. George campus in downtown Toronto, does not have a co-op program for many departments. For some departments like engineering, I believe it does, but for many programs, it does not. So there are some exceptions, and this is why it's important for people who are interested in Canadian universities to research this. Okay. One of the reasons why I chose SFU was the co-op program. It's a paid work experience facilitated by your university. So this is an important point to contrast from my neighbors in the United States. Many internships in the US are not paid. And so students can apply for these jobs through the co-op program, and they get support and guidance from co-op coordinators. And the employers take advantage of the filtering system that's set up by the co-op program. So employers in Canada often hire only co-op students. So they don't open many internships publicly on their careers page. They just hire through co-op programs. And also, co-op is only available to you while you're still in university. So as soon as you graduate, you can't take advantage of co-op anymore. So this is why I encourage students to take advantage of co-op as much as they can to explore different careers while they're still in university. Because suppose that, just like what happened to me, I took a job in laboratory chemistry at an environmental testing company, and I did not like it. I tried it actually in 2 different departments, and I did not like the experience. But thankfully, it was only for 8 months.
Right.
So I wasn't stuck in that job permanently, right?
Right. That's a good point.
So oftentimes co-op jobs last for only 4 months. And so at the end of the 4 months, if you like it, you can pursue something similar to that in your next co-op job, or pursue that for your permanent job when you graduate. And if you don't, you can explore something else.
Right.
So that's why it's important to take advantage of co-op while you're still in university. And as I mentioned before, many students get permanent jobs with co-op employers upon finishing their degree. So they do the co-op, they perform well, the employers notice them, they stay in touch during their education, and the employers offer them permanent jobs upon graduation. So this is an excellent opportunity for students to gain work experience and find opportunities for permanent jobs when they graduate.
Okay.
So if I could offer some advice about internships, summer is the most competitive time for internships and co-op jobs in universities. So if you want to stay away from the competition, you may want to consider applying to work in the fall or the spring. So many employers need help year long, right? It's not just the summer when they operate. Now, some employers do, like for example, a summer camp may only operate in the summer, and so those jobs are only available in the summer. But say a bank has to operate year round. It doesn't just operate in the summer. So if you want to stay away from the competition, you may want to consider working in the fall or the spring. But if you do want to work in the summer, you need to apply early. Apply in January, or at least start that process in January, because employers are often posting jobs at that time, and you can beat the competition. There are many students who are lazy and don't apply early enough. And so that's another way of staying away from the competition, is to apply early.
Okay. Right? Can you roll a co-op into a second co-op? Like, could you
oftentimes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so you could get like an opportunity in January, work that spring, and then have the advantage of having the experience there to roll into a second term.
If the employer allows it, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes employers will hire students to work for only 8 months. They will not accept a 4-month co-op term because they spend too much time to train the students to work in those jobs. They want a good return on their investment from that training. And so they don't want the students to train for a month and then be a productive worker for only 3 months. They want them to stay for 8 months to produce and work and add value to the company for a substantive amount of time. So some employers hire for only 8 months. And so you got to coordinate that and find out what works for you as you're applying for these jobs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the last bit of advice I want to give is it's a good idea to document what you accomplish while you're going through school and publish them online. And that's a really good way of standing out from other job applicants to the employers. And this is especially important for people who work in our fields, in statistics and data science and analytics and other data-driven fields. So document what you have worked on in a GitHub or in a blog or in a website. And your projects don't have to be your projects could be a research project that you've done on your own, or it could be a really big and complicated homework problem that you did in a course that happened to be really impressive. So anything that you do that involves computation, involves computer programming, and involves an interesting, oftentimes ambiguous question that requires you to make some analytical judgment about how to devise a research strategy, a research tactic, and then execute that on your own and present the results through tables and plots and explain them in a coherent and clear and concise way. Those are excellent ways to document and display what you've accomplished online.
So I think it's a great idea as well from a different perspective, from the interviewing side, because I know when you go through the interview, right? Say you did a project or something at school and it was challenging and you worked on it, but it was 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's amazing to have it written down somewhere in your own words, because as you prepare for those interviews, you can go back and look at your past projects in history. And then when somebody asks you a question on that topic, it's fresh in your mind. Because I know I've done stuff, now it's been like 15 years, but way back in the day, and it's so old, I just can't remember those details and I don't come off as smooth and as knowledgeable. But I do like to go back and kind of reference those old materials and notes I've taken over time.
That's a good point. And I think that especially if you worked on a project in which there were some key metrics that highlight how great you were, how successful you were. Like you were able to increase the revenue for a client by 60%, or you were able to cut costs by 33%. Well, those are statistics that would be difficult to remember many years down the road if you don't document them somehow. Right. So if you have that electronic paper trail to document what you accomplished, and you can say them confidently and credibly, and you have either the data to back it up, or you have referees who can attest to your success, then that would be a really good way to impress a future employer.
Definitely.
Right. So beyond co-op, there are other things in Canada that help university students to get work experience.
Okay.
And so I want to highlight just a few programs at both the federal level and also on the provincial level.
Okay. Okay.
So at the federal level, here are some common programs that fund or even just provide employment for university students. So one is called the Federal Student Work Experience Program, or FSWEP. And this program provides jobs in the Canadian federal government. So these are different departments that hire students, oftentimes in the summer, but also throughout the year.
Do you have a slide on this?
I wonder.
If not, I'll put it below because I'm going to put some links.
So here, actually, I think here I'll be happy to go to Google and search this for you. So
yeah, I think this will be great for a lot of listeners in Canada who want to actually look into this and see these opportunities.
Right. So you are eligible if you are a full-time high school CEGEP college or university student. So CEGEP is a college preparatory program in the province of Quebec.
Okay.
You're returning to full-time studies in the next academic year, and you meet the minimum age requirement in the province or territory of work.
Right? Okay. Okay. That's good to know.
Okay. So this is FSWEP. And then another program is Canada Summer Jobs, which is a wage subsidy program. And Canada Summer Jobs does not offer employment to students directly, but it provides a subsidy for employers to hire post-secondary students.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you go to the CSJ's website, so let's go to Canada Summer Jobs. Hold on. Oh, this is not the program that I hold. Hold on. Canada's. Okay, here we go. Funding, Canada Summer Jobs. Okay, here we go. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah. So you and I are holding this conversation in May of 2021 right now. So students are already starting their summer jobs. Right. So this program provides wage subsidies to employers from nonprofit organizations, the public sector, and the private sector with 50 or fewer full-time employees.
Okay.
To create quality summer work experiences for young people aged 15 to 30 years.
Okay.
So this is another program that post-secondary students can take advantage of to build work experience. And then another program is from the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, which is the undergraduate student research program. I think technically it may be called the Undergraduate Student Research Award. So NSERC USRA, I think, is the acronym. That's right.
Okay.
So the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council is a funding agency from the government of Canada for academic research in the natural sciences and engineering. And it funds research at various levels, including the undergraduate level. So you can get $6,000 from NSERC plus whatever the university contributes as a supplement. And so I got an NSERC USRA to research molecular cardiac physiology in my second year. So right after my second year, in my second summer as an undergraduate student, I got one of these awards to do research with a very accomplished professor at SFU. So that was if you get one of these, it will look very good on your resume. It's very competitive. And but if you get one of these awards, you can get good research experience, and it will help you in your future job applications and future academic applications. So these are just some of the programs that are available from the federal government in Canada that I'm aware of. I have experience with FSWEP and NSERC. So beyond job programs, the last thing I want to emphasize about getting work experience in universities is that there are many resources at universities to help students to develop their careers. And I think that many university students don't take advantage of these resources.
Right. So, I was one of those. We always have these, and I just always felt like too nervous to go, or perhaps it wasn't what I was looking for. I would definitely recommend my younger self, this would have made a bigger difference, I think, for me.
So most universities have career centers to help students with their cover letters and their resumes and their job interviews. I volunteered at the Career Center at Simon Fraser University when I was an undergraduate student. So I was helping students with those things. And I know that at the center that I volunteered at, they would even do a mock interview and record your performance during that interview. And then you can get the tape afterward and review your performance and review what went well, what didn't go well, right?
Yeah, I think that's excellent because so in my industry, right, I'm a native speaker being in the United States. Many of my colleagues came from internationals as well, and they were always nervous to do the interviews. Even as an American, I was too nervous to do the interview. And I kick myself looking back at it because I ended up having to fail so many real world interviews and practice to finally realize this is where I'm messing up. I'm not speaking very clearly. If I can't hear, for example, right, asking oh, can you repeat yourself? And so I failed so many interviews where I could have easily have taken advantage of those, mock interviews and just hit the ground running right out of school.
Besides resumes, cover letters, and mock interviews, career centers often hold workshops and hold career fairs that can connect you to employers. They will often organize panel discussions and invite people who work in a certain industry or a certain cluster of industries. And so you can ask questions and meet people who graduated from your university and eventually found jobs in their fields of studies. So you can ask them about the common university experiences that led them to their eventual careers. And there are just all kinds of really good resources and events that these career centers organize. So I encourage you to take advantage of these career centers. And by the way, for any of your American audiences, I am spelling the word center correctly for Canada, in case you find that to be strange. All right, so I've already talked a lot about cooperative education. So take advantage of co-op. And also ask your own academic department about employment opportunities. So I got several research jobs in various departments that I studied in when I was at SFU. So those weren't co-op jobs. Those weren't funded by a provincial government or a federal government. Those were just jobs that were available through professors in different departments. And there was networking. It was meeting professors, performing well in courses so that I had a good academic credibility to ask for these jobs. But that's, of course, that's just the start. Then it's perhaps there are volunteering opportunities that you can do, especially when you're starting out. You may not be able to get paid work experience right away. So you may have to volunteer in a professor's lab or in a professor's research group to start with. And then you can get paid work experience with a professor. Perhaps the professor has access to research awards and research grants that can fund your employment on their team. So you should definitely ask your department, ask your graduate chair or undergraduate chair, depending on which level you're at, ask your departmental chair, ask professors whom you know that, ask them for referrals, ask them for information, ask them to introduce you to professors who may be hiring for students to work as research assistants.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely good advice.
Okay, to those who are not familiar with Canadian universities, I think it's important to highlight that Canadian universities are mostly public. I think there are a few private universities, and they may be religious ones. I'm not really familiar with the private universities in Canada. What I can tell you is the vast majority of the universities in Canada are public, and therefore their tuition fees are a lot lower. And I think compared to the United States, these figures may shock some of your viewers. So if you are an undergraduate student in Canada, and if you are a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, then in the current academic year, your average tuition fee would be $6,580 for the entire year.
Which is cheap.
Okay. And by the way, these are in Canadian dollars. So I think the exchange rate right now is for every American dollar, it's $1.30 is Canada. I can't remember what exactly so let me search for that. So
it's definitely cheap though.
Yeah, it's a lot lower, right? So right now, $1 American dollar is worth $1.21 in Canada. So it's very cheap, right? If you're an American and you have Canadian citizenship or you have permanent residency status in Canada, then you can take advantage of the tuition fees in Canada. And by the way, even if you're not a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, so in the current academic year, the tuition fees, the average tuition fees, tuition fee for an international undergraduate student is $32,000 Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Well, compare that to an American university. If you're paying American dollars, that may still be a competitive rate for you.
Yeah.
So if you're considering universities and you have some connection to Canada, or you're interested in studying in Canada, this may be a very decisive factor for you, right?
Yeah.
And if you are a resident of Quebec, then tuition fees are even lower.
Okay.
So at the federal level, it's 6,580. At the undergraduate level in Quebec, it's 3,155. Right, so it's almost half.
It's very, very cheap. Very cheap for the US. I mean, tuition, oh man, for like an average state school here, so lower end is probably around, I'd say about $10,000 US dollars. And then private school could be $20,000, $30,000 a year for just tuition. So
right. So if you're going by reputation, some of the top universities in Canada have very strong reputation, like the University of Toronto, the University of Waterloo, especially for computer science and engineering and math and statistics. McGill University, the University of British Columbia, at least by reputation anyway, these Canadian universities have very strong reputations. And so if you go to these universities, you may pay an international undergraduate fee of $32,000 Canadian, but it would be less than what you would pay for a second tier private university in the United States.
right.
So that may be something for you to consider, right? And for those who are not familiar with Canadian universities, one way to explore which universities are in Canada would be to go to Maclean's magazine and go to their annual rankings of universities. And Maclean's breaks them down into 3 categories. So there's medical doctoral schools. So these are schools that have medical schools, that have law schools, that have nursing schools, that have PhD programs. So these are the big, highly reputable universities like University of Toronto, McGill University in Montreal, Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, University of British Columbia in Vancouver, British Columbia. So those are some of the big medical doctoral schools. They're the comprehensive schools, which generally have PhD programs, but may not have the medical schools or the law schools. So my undergraduate alma mater, SFU, is a comprehensive school.
Okay.
And then there's the third group, the primarily undergraduate schools. And as the name suggests, they're primarily undergraduate. So they likely don't have medical schools or law schools, and they may not even have PhD programs. And they may not even have master's programs. So these are primarily undergraduate schools. Now, by no means am I endorsing Maclean's rankings. By no means am I necessarily agreeing with Maclean's rankings. I'm just providing this as a resource for viewers who are not familiar with Canadian universities, not familiar with where these universities are located, how they are ranked in terms of reputation or in terms of employability or any other metric. This is just a resource for you to learn about which Canadian universities exist and how to assess them based on a variety of admittedly subjective measures.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I've been talking a lot, Dimitri. Do you have any questions for me?
No, this is great. I'm learning a ton about, Canadian universities. I think one of the important points to talk about is, why not go for the PhD? So we talked about, we're thinking about this a little bit, right? I think it's important to note here too, for a lot of the viewers is, I recommend statistics undergrads because it has such a wide array of jobs available. And so I just wanted to point out here too, that you're talking about a lot of these jobs are available to those with an undergraduate degree, which is an amazing opportunity in your career, especially. It's amazing to see, the breadth of career opportunities, the different industries you've gone into here. But do you want to talk a little bit about why not a PhD? Like why you didn't go that route?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked this question because I will write a newsletter in my Substack newsletter, The Median, about this very topic soon.
Okay.
So to give a preview about that, I think that you should pursue a PhD in statistics only if you want to be a professor.
Okay.
If you want to work outside of academia, a master's degree is usually enough. And it's more important for employers that you have good work experience and you have developed a good reputation and that you have positive references from past employers, that you have a good collection of online projects that you can display on your public profile, on your online profile. I think those are the more important things for working in the private sector and outside of in non-academic jobs, outside of academia. There are some jobs that are very research oriented in the private sector that would value a PhD, but most jobs do not require a PhD.
Right, and the majority of jobs you've had, right, as you've mentioned, a lot of these are going to be those with master's and undergraduate degrees, correct?
As requirements, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and not all of them required masters, by the way.
Right.
Some of them would have required just a bachelor's degree.
Right. And contrasting that to quantitative finance, so more on the banking side, we typically see the master's as the minimum, and then the PhD as a minimum in some cases for some jobs. As you've somewhat pointed out, right, it's the same trend. If it's research oriented, it's going to require more of a PhD. Typically, if it's more hands-on, it's going to require a master's. But I think it's important to kind of contrast those and look at those options. And I think that's why statistics is such an amazing undergraduate degree, because you can hit the ground running with an undergrad degree. And then, as we've talked about, right, choosing a career, trying to figure out what you do and don't like, what opens opportunities. You can always venture into that master's realm if you want to open up more opportunities kind of across the board in multiple areas.
Echoing what you're saying, I have worked in many different fields. I've worked in industrial analytics, HIV research, cancer surveillance, banking, marketing analytics. Now I work in consumer packaged goods and retail. I've worked in a variety of industries, and that's one of the really nice things about being a statistician, is that I can jump between different industries fairly easily, right? If I worked as a chemist, it would be fairly difficult to switch between different industries. I think that there are different fields that a chemist can work in, but it's not as diverse and it's not as transferable as statistics, for example.
Right. Definitely challenging to make that switch.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So any final words for our viewers here on the education piece in Canada?
Yes, I think there's several things that I would recommend students to think about and research. So,
okay.
Number one, I think that where you study is really important for your networking and your proximity to internships and co-op jobs and your connections to future employers after graduation. And this is really important for your master's degree.
Right.
I think that for your undergraduate degree, and even for your undergraduate degree, but especially for your master's degree or PhD, when you know that you're going to work after graduate, right? Like if you know that you're not going to stay in academia, but I can only speak for myself, right? I chose not to stay in academia. I chose to just finish with a master's degree. I knew that I was likely going to work right after my master's degree. So I had to choose a city that had jobs available that were close to where I was living and where I was studying. That was important it was important for me to go to networking events, go to seminars, meet people for informational interviews. And at least before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was very important to do that in person and to do that easily and not need to travel for a long time to go to those events. And I had a chance to study with a very accomplished statistician at a small university in Atlantic Canada, in Eastern Canada. Okay. And it would have been a great experience, and I'm sure that I would have learned a lot from that professor. But that university did not offer any academic funding, so that was probably the most important reason. U of T, by the way, offered me full academic funding plus a stipend and a job as a teaching assistant. So that was a no-brainer. I was definitely going to choose U of T. But also, U of T had an 8-month master's program that was entirely course-based, whereas this other master's program would have been for 2 years. So 8 months versus 24 months, I'll take the 8 months and just go in and out the door very quickly and go to work, right? But finally, a very important reason is that I would have gone to a very small city in Atlantic Canada. So Atlantic Canada itself, it's a beautiful place. I've spent a vacation in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's beautiful there, but there aren't that many jobs there compared to a bigger city like Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver.
Right.
So going to the University of Toronto to do my master's degree was advantageous in terms of the academic funding, in terms of the short duration, and perhaps most importantly, in terms of the proximity to employers, to networking events, the ease of conducting informational interviews. So when you're choosing where you want to study, I strongly encourage you to choose a city that's conducive for your networking, for your career building. So that's a really key thing to consider. So the major cities in Canada are Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And then there's some other cities like Calgary, Alberta, Ottawa, Ontario. Ottawa, by the way, is the capital city of Canada. So it's where many governmental jobs are available at the federal level. So those are some other cities to consider. Toronto, far and away, is the biggest city in terms of the job market and in terms of the diversity of employers and the kinds of jobs that are available. So I'm really glad that I had a chance to do my master's degree in Toronto, because then I got to network and find a job in Toronto right after graduation. So that's one important thing to consider. Something else to consider, especially for my American neighbors and to anybody else really, some people want to experience a different culture when they study in a different country. And I think that if you care about that as a student, you may want to go to Quebec and study, because Quebec is a Francophone province. And so most people speak French there.
Okay, yeah.
And yet it's important to note that there are 2 big universities in Montreal alone that are Anglophone. So McGill University is one of the most prestigious, most reputable universities and one of the biggest universities in Canada. It's located in Montreal, but it is an English-speaking university. It is an Anglophone university. So you can go to McGill University as an American and study in English, but live in a Francophone city. So you can have the comfort of studying in English, but learn to speak French and experience a different culture. And Montreal, especially old Montreal, has a very European feeling about it. I visited Montreal for a statistics conference and also spent some time for a vacation there. I really enjoyed that city, and I got to practice my French there a bit. I'm an Anglophone Canadian, as you can tell, and I speak some French, but it's not very good. And I was really happy to get a chance to practice my French and experience a different culture there for the week that I spent there. So if you want to have a different culture, but you still want the comfort of studying in English, then Montreal may be a good place for you to study, especially because it's still a fairly big city with many employers available. I mentioned McGill University. Concordia University is another university that is English speaking in Montreal.
Okay.
And then there is also a university called Bishop's University in Lennoxville, Quebec, which is also English speaking.
Okay.
And it is, according to Maclean's rankings, it is a highly reputable school that is at the primarily undergraduate level.
Okay.
So I don't know much about Bishop's University. All I know about Bishop's is based on what I've read about in the Maclean's rankings and what I've heard from other people. But if you're considering an Anglophone experience and you want to experience a different culture and learn to speak French, but have the comfort of studying in English, then consider some of the Anglophone universities in Quebec. And by the way, there are Francophone regions in other parts of Canada. So we have a province called New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada that is officially bilingual. So
Okay.
it is both Anglophone and Francophone. So there's a city in New Brunswick called Moncton,
Mhm.
and the University of Moncton, I believe, is a Francophone university.
Okay.
Right? I believe that the University of Ottawa in our nation's capital is a bilingual university.
Okay. So you'd have the chance to do both there as well.
Right. And there are other regions, like, for example, in certain parts of Manitoba, like St. Boniface, that I don't know if there's a university in St. Boniface, but I do know that St. Boniface is a French-speaking region of Manitoba, right?
Okay.
I know that there's a city in northern Ontario called Sudbury that has some French-speaking people, and Sudbury has a university called Laurentian University. So again, if you want to experience a different culture, but you want to have the comfort of studying in English, then there are many options for you to consider in Canada.
Okay.
And I think the last thing that I would encourage everybody to consider is that Canada's universities are generally, I think American employers consider Canadian universities to be equally reputable as American universities. I think that when they look at someone who graduated from a Canadian university, they don't, my sense is they don't think that they are less qualified in any way. I've never gotten that impression from American employers. So you can definitely arbitrage and take advantage of the lower tuition fees to go to a different country, perhaps learn a different language and study at a lower tuition fee without sacrificing any reputation in terms of your university's branding when you're applying for jobs. And of course, employers care a lot more than just your degree and the reputation of your university anyway. But if that's something that you are worried about, I don't think that American employers and employers everywhere really care about that.
There's a slight advantage to going to a U.S. university over a Canadian one. But then again, coming back to like you're saying, right? If you went to like University of Toronto and someone else went to like a generic U.S. school, University of Toronto is well known internationally, right. And so it's still going to look good coming from a top school in Canada.
Right. Okay. This is helpful for me to talk to an American to find out what the impressions are like, right?
Right.
I've worked in Canada, so I've gone to business trips in the United States at various times. So I've not worked in the U.S. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I think that Canada's universities have a lot to offer, and I think that the cooperative education is a really good program that students should take advantage of. I think that there are many beautiful parts of Canada. I think Canada as a whole is a very beautiful country with a lot of natural scenery, and there's sports and recreation and outdoor recreation, outdoor fitness. These things are very much valued in our country's culture, and people enjoy going for runs and walks and hikes and biking trips, and they like to ski and snowboard. And so there are all kinds of fun places to live in and study in Canada. So I encourage your viewers to consider Canadian universities.
Okay. All right. Well, Eric, it was great having you on. I look forward to adding, a few more episodes with you as well.
Yes, we will have more conversations about my career in statistics and other topics related to statistics and data science. So I look forward to those conversations.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.